Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to An Hour to Kill, a podcast where we take an hour of your time talking about horror and we slash it up. I'm your host, Dorian Addy Brown, and once again, I am joined by the Immortan, Damon DB Weathers. Damon, what's up, man?
Hey man, not much. How you doing?
Oh, we're doing pretty good. We're pretty good. It's a Tuesday, right? Tuesdays.
Oh yeah, I forgot it was Tuesday. Thanks. I
Yeah,
needed that
yeah, no.
reminder.
It is a Tuesday indeed, but not a bad Tuesday. I mean, some Tuesdays are not bad. We're also joined today by a very special guest making his second appearance on the podcast. He joined me last episode for our lovely Beau is Afraid spoiler cast, which, if you haven't listened to that and you've watched Beau, please do so. But here he is himself, Buffo the Clown, Mac. Mac, what's up, man?
I'm just watching the Braves squander the lead again, so that's how my night's going.
If you want to know a real horror movie, try being a Braves fan. Am I right?
It's been a nightmare with the bullpen. So many
Yeah,
injuries.
they've been pretty
Oh my
bad.
god! But yet we're
The
still
Coop, they
first
can't
inning
do it
Yankees.
all.
It doesn't matter.
I was gonna say I don't know enough about baseball to turn this into a baseball podcast, but if I did, I would, play up the meme a little bit. Unfortunately, I do not. That being said, we are here for a very special episode today, and we're going to be talking about our favorite slasher movie. That's right, the genre of horror that is ingrained in all of your young teenage minds, the slasher movie. We all had some, tough picks to make, and besides Mac, but I mean, me and Damon had some tough picks to make here, and that we did. So yeah, let's talk about it. We didn't do a coin toss to determine who would go first in this one, just because I had a funny episode title in mind for this one. So basically, I'll be going first. Damon will be going second, and then Mac will be going last with his movie choice. But right now, we're just going to tell you our choices. So I picked Suspiria. Now, and we'll talk about that when we get into the episode. But yes, it is a slasher, and if you think it isn't, you're wrong. But anyways, we'll talk about that more. Suspiria was my pick, though. I had a couple of movies that I honestly considered. Like, I'll be honest, Halloween is very, very, very close to me. I didn't pick that for reasons you'll find out very shortly. Friday the 13th, the original, Nightmare on Elm Street. There are so many classic slasher movies that I definitely thought of and considered, but I landed on Suspiria for lots of reasons, which you will hear, eventually. Damon, what did you pick?
I went with Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. That isn't the actual final chapter, but they started the trend of calling sequels a final chapter and giving you another 6. But yeah, I went with good old Jason, and it was tough. I was between that. I was between Scream, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Maniac. Actually, the 1984 one, though, not the remake with Elijah Wood.
Good picks. I've actually never seen Maniac, so that's on my list. I want to watch it at some point. And Scream would definitely be on mine too. I don't know why I brain farted on that, but yeah, Scream's definitely honorable consideration too, because it's a fantastic movie.
Oh yeah,
Like a
it
really
was
damn good
tough.
movie.
It was. I was up until last minute on that one. So sorry for the late
I can
late pick,
confirm
both of you.
I can't confirm he was last minute because I had another one written down and was like ready to watch it. And he's like, "Wait, Audible." I was like, "Okay," which I'm fine with because I'm not a huge Texas Chainsaw Massacre fan. I'm sorry, Texas Chainsaw Massacre fans.
Ugh.
Mac, what was you? I mean, we know what your pick is, but go ahead and just say it for everyone.
I think my pick was probably the most shocking of the group here. I know a lot of people know me and are going to be very shocked to find out that I picked 1978's horror classic, John Carpenter's Halloween. I know it's shocking. I know. I get it.
Wow.
Uh,
Wait, so I watched the Rob Zombie one last night for no
Oh
reason?
shit, I did too. What the hell?
Give me 1 second. I'm going to log out of Zencaster. Let's see. I'll just close the browser. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. But I did. I thought about like, should I switch it up though? Should I pick a maybe a little bit lesser known to like a mass general audience? Not that these two movies that I was kind of toying with are unknown, but Black Christmas, Sleepaway Camp, really enjoy those two films. And this might be a little bit controversial, but I think Sleepaway Camp's probably my favorite camp slasher.
Hell yes.
So, I mean, I love Friday the 13th, but Sleepaway Camp, that ending, oh my god, that
Yeah.
ending is so good.
Sleepaway Camp is another one I haven't seen, but I've heard very interesting things about it, so it's definitely on my list to watch too. So interesting choice. But yeah, I was not surprised. In fact, when I had this episode idea ready, I was like, well, I just got to get Mac on here because I know what he's going to choose, and I want to talk about it on the podcast a little bit because it is such a great film. So I was like, yeah, like obviously Max is shoo-in for this episode. All right. So just a little bit of housekeeping here before we get underway. The rules of the podcast are pretty simple. We're going to have 1 hour to discuss this. Because there's 3 people today, it's going to be 20 minutes on each episode. So there's going to be a strict episode on each movie. So there's going to be a strict 20-minute time limit for every single movie. Once the timer is up, we're moving on to the next one, and you'll have all of the entertainment you need in an hour. All right. So if there's nothing else, I think we're ready to get started. Damon, are you ready?
Let's do it.
Mac, ready to go?
Okay.
Fantastic. All right. So we're going to be starting the timer right now. Let's get into it. The first pick was Suspiria, of course, the 1977 classic, which I did forget to mention off the top, directed by Dario the Goat Argentino and starring Jessica Harper. Susie travels to Germany to attend ballet school. When she arrives late on a stormy night, no one lets her in, and she sees Pat, another student, fleeing from the school. When Pat reaches her apartment, she is murdered. The next day, Susie is admitted to her new school, but has a difficult time settling in. She hears noises and often feels ill. As more people die, Susie uncovers the terrifying secret history of this place. And we're going to do the fun fact where it's supposed to be at the start here. Fun fact, director Dario Argentino composed the creepy music with the band Goblin and played it at a full blast on set to unnerve the actors and elicit a truly scared performance. We're talking Blair Witch stuff before Blair Witch. What a way to set a trend, Mr. Argentino. But yes, Suspiria is my pick. I love this fucking movie so much, and rewatching this was just a joy because it had been a while since I've seen it. So let's just start going down my list here of notes, and we can all kind of clamor in where we want to. But I think anytime we have to have a conversation about Suspiria, and even if you're not a big fan of the movie, which, spoiler, one of these people aren't going to be a big fan of the movie, even if you aren't a big fan of the movie, I think you do have to give some props to the score of this movie, because I think it is by far one of the most memorable scores I've ever heard in a horror film. And just shout out the Goblin, man. Shout out Goblin, because this score just sets the tone right away at the top of the movie. And it's, of course, the very first note I have. Like, it's just an incredible score. Is it not, boys?
Oh, I mean, it might be their best.
I think it is their best. It's also the best thing about this film, but I'll save a little bit more for that for later.
But yeah, no. So you kind of get the fear and just the unnervingness of the score from the very start. And I have a note here that the start of this movie, it kind of reminds you of like a haunted fairy tale almost, just from the colors you're getting and the cinematography and that score playing in the background. And it would feel whimsical if it wasn't so scary to me. And I just love the vibe this movie just gives off kind of right away, because, traditionally from horror movies and slasher movies and horror movies in general, I find it's a lot of dark and grime and scary. And I mentioned Texas Chainsaw Massacre earlier. And one of the reasons I'm really not a fan of that movie is just because I can't fucking see anything. It's so fucking dark. Maybe it was just the cut I watched. I'm sure the 4K cut maybe has improved that somewhat, because that's been a long time since I've watched it. But I hate how dark and grimy it is, because it's hard to see anything in that damn movie. With Suspiria, man, everything is so bright and vivid and colorful. And that's just stuff you usually don't see in a horror movie. Don't you think, Damon?
Oh, absolutely. It's Argento at his peak, right? But that's what he does. Everything's colorful and vibrant and German expressionist architecture, all that shit.
Yeah, the set's gorgeous. Like, just that the ballet school itself, it's a character in the movie, right? Like, it's its own entity and it exists and it feels very lived in. Mac, I know you're not a huge fan of this movie, obviously, but do you agree with that? Like, do you like the colors, the use of that kind of stuff, the unique tone of this movie? What do you think about all that?
Now, I know I told y'all in the group chat that I had more than one good thing to say about this film, and one of those was the soundtrack of Goblin. Uh, the second thing is the use of color. I really do love the color. I love the set design. It's very beautiful to look at. I just want to say that Giallo has just never really connected with me completely. So I don't know why, to be honest, but the only Giallo film that I can say that I really liked was by De Palma, and I don't know if that really counts. But Dress to Kill, pretty cool
Oh
if you haven't
yeah,
seen it.
that's totally his spin on Giallo. I get that.
But that's a story for another time. Uh, but I don't know. Color's great.
Yeah, nope, and that's fair. That's fair. um, moving down the line of my notes here, I just again I think the opening of this movie is very good. Like it just sets a really strong tone right away. The kill is really graphic, it feels like, especially for the time. And it's done very well, in my opinion. This whole movie has a vibe to it that, I mean, it's really, this is a personal thing that I love a lot. And you're going to hear me bring this up quite a bit. And we do plan, actually, it's a bit of a spoiler. We plan on doing a David Lynch episode fairly quickly here this year. And one of the things I like about his movies so much, and then this one, is I just have a big thing for movies that I feel like I'm in a nightmare. They kind of have this that kind of a nightmare aesthetic to it, like you can't wake up from it. And I got that a lot from this movie, which I really, really dig. So yeah, I think that's really cool. The humor that's sprinkled throughout the movie, I love. That just feels. I mean, I haven't seen a lot of Dario Argento stuff, but I have a feeling he's kind of got that. Just I kind of feel that that's sort of his thing. He's probably got a lot of that kind of stuff mixed in there and has his own vibe. I definitely do want to see more from him because I think he's just a tremendous, tremendous talent and very creative with what he does. I feel like a lot of this movie too must have been inspired in part, and I don't know this for sure, so I'm just kind of talking off the cuff here, but it definitely feels like a lot of this movie was inspired by the Red Shoes and just that kind of whole. I'm sure you guys have both seen that movie.
Oh yeah.
One of Martin Scorsese's favorite pictures, but I definitely got vibes from that. And then in turn, I think both of these movies probably went on and were probably a fairly decent inspiration for Black Swan. So I don't know, just the whole ballet thing. I feel like there's a lot to explore there, and it's interesting that it's been kind of tapped. Kind of in the what was the Red Shoes, the 40s? Was it the 40s?
48.
48, yeah. And then this was obviously, and then this was 77, and then Black Swan obviously was in the 2000s. So it's interesting, big chunks, but they keep coming back to it, which is really cool. At times the camera work all feels very claustrophobic here, which I really, really appreciate and love. Oh, let's talk about one of my favorite scenes in the movie, the maggot. Just when I absolutely adore that scene when they're all just kind of, they're all kind of chilling, and then you just see the maggots starting to drip down everywhere, and you get that soundtrack just start blazing, and they run up to the attic and they find it. So we get this cool sequence where they're in the gym with all these different, again, the colors, and it's all just so fantastic. What you guys like the maggotry going on here?
It's stuff like that I really like about the movie. It's not as gory as you'd kind of expect or think, and it's scenes like that, or scenes in the barbed wire pit, which you say barbed wire pit, and you go to Saw, and you think it's going to be real gnarly, but it's really just that tension that he ratchets up by everything in the scene and how the setup is, and then when you get into it, it's really just more the implied nature of how shitty this feels to be in. So for me, that works tremendously.
Mac, any thoughts?
It's all right. I do think the little barbed wire scene, it cracks me up every time I've seen it.
It's definitely,
that's positive, I guess.
Yeah, the movie definitely, like, it's not to me, it's not like I'm not sitting in like, and to be honest with you, no slasher movie ever, and I don't think I've ever seen a slasher movie where I'm sitting there like cowering in fear. That just, slashers don't scare me. That's just, and people are going to be different. Some people might be scared by that sort of thing. Slashers don't scare me. And if that's where I think the really good slashers do a good job at entertaining you. And yeah, they might have like a couple frights in there. Like there are times where I think Suspiria is very creepy. There are times in, we'll talk about it, where Halloween gets me too. But that's not their primary goal for me from a slasher. And I think that's what Suspiria does above all else for me is it entertains, which I really do appreciate. But yeah, I think I want to talk about for a second. While we kind of touched on it a little bit, but Luciano Tovoli, who does the cinematography in this movie, the cinematography is absolutely outstanding in this movie. There are so many beautiful shots. The way things like I said, it just kind of feels like a painting at times. And it's just beautiful to me. Like I love the way this movie is shot. Which it's funny. I'm looking down this guy's Letterboxd account now, and he did Monkey Trouble. So that's obvious where the beautiful cinematography chops come from Monkey Trouble. But yeah, no, I love the cinematography. And again, like this is another personal thing, but anytime you kind of mix in witchcraft and cult things, I just love that. That's something with horror and just in general I really really vibe with. And if a movie is kind of exploring those themes, I think it's super interesting. But yeah, that generally covers a lot of the things I want to talk about. Matt, or not Mac, Damon, I know you're a huge fan of this movie too, so I'll toss it over to you if you want to run through some of your notes and bring up anything you wanted to.
Well, I actually wanted to. I mean, it's very. What was the phrase we used to talk about it in college, and it was terror and Technicolor, right? Because this was one of the last movies that
Yeah,
was done in Technicolor, if I remember correctly.
yes, I believe so.
But to kind of Mac's point about laughing during the barbed wire sequence and other sequences, though, how do you feel about the acting? Like in giallo films, and I don't know if it's you chalk it up to language barrier or differences of maybe cultural differences, but I have always felt like the acting in this is a little wonky and a little over the top and a little maybe even trite in some spots. I look past it because I love all the other aspects of it, but I don't know. I was curious what you thought about it.
Oh, I agree, but I very much believe it's maybe not to all on purpose, but I believe it's not supposed to be played as seriously at points. And I
By
do
that,
love that. Like I think the acting is just it's definitely funny at times to me. Like there are times when you get these line deliveries. I forget the one guy's name, but the one guy that has the really ugly face. He doesn't say a word, but he just kind of skulks around. And every time I see him, I laugh just the way he looks. Not because he's ugly, but just like the expression on his face is so good. Like it's like he's just trying to look uglier is the way I get to put it. But yeah, I love that stuff. And I'll toss it over to you, Mac, to comment on that. I'm assuming like that's kind of one of the reasons you probably don't like this movie is the acting because it is very, it's definitely
a bit
special at
hammy.
times.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure, Mac.
Yeah, the performances really, I don't like them really. But to be honest, most horror movies have terrible acting in them, so it's really
That's a
not
good point.
the biggest deal when I'm watching a horror film though. Uh, and I know some people, I know the dubbing could probably mess with people, but that doesn't bother me really because I'm used to uh, Italian spaghetti westerns growing up, and I love those, and it's just part of the
Hell yeah.
charm for me. Uh, but I don't know. I really can't put my finger on exactly what I don't like about this movie. This is the second time I've actually seen it, but that very first time, I think it's really just a result of just so many people hyping this film up. It's like, oh man, it's one of the greatest Giallo movies ever. It's like perfect horror. I've heard people call it perfect horror. It's just one of the best. I just don't see it. I don't know. I much prefer the Luca Guadagnino Suspiria by a wide margin, and I had to put that in here at least once. So.
Yeah, I guess we should at least quickly touch on it. Obviously, this movie did get a remake by Luca. I'm not even gonna try. Good old Luca though, Luca G.
Guadagnino.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest with you. Actually, I don't hate the movie. I think it's fine, and it is well acted, and it has a really great score too, by Radiohead, man himself. So I really like the score a lot too. My issue with that movie though is I just don't feel it's a very. I don't feel Suspiria needed a remake, and I really think it should have just been its own thing. Like I just really didn't want it connected with this at all. I didn't want it having the same name. I also have really strong feelings for Suspiria and like it a lot, so that's definitely part of it. But it just feels so disconnected from the first movie, personally.
It's funny. I've actually spoken to people about the remake, and it's always been so split down the middle. I've had people actually tell me exactly what you said, Mac, that they liked the remake more than the original, whether they were Giallo fans or not Giallo fans or whatever it was. And I thought that was crazy. And then I've had other people completely hate it because they're such big fans of the original. So I wonder if the original being as, I don't know if I want to say it's divisive, but with it having, two different sides, kind of lends to the remake. And it sounds like, and I haven't seen it, so I obviously can't speak too much to it, but from everything I do know about it, it does seem like they, like Luca G, I'm not going to try it either, really tried to, I don't know, I don't want to say it sounds like he really tried to explore more than what Dario was trying to explore.
Yes, no, for sure.
More in the philosophical side and all that, and hey man, I respect that as trying to make it your own thing as opposed to just copying it. So I can respect it. I do want to see it eventually.
No, same. I respect that idea. I respect the idea. It's tough when the original is such a classic to me. So it's always tough when you see something that's such a classic being twisted. By the way, we've got 5 minutes left on this conversation, just so we're at the 5-minute warning here. So I'll kick it back to either of you. Do either of you have any more notes you wanted to go over with this? Anything you want to discuss specifically?
I'm sure Mac's ready to just move away from it.
The only thing I would add would be that the remake, I feel like that's the type of film that a remake needs to just kind of be its own thing and not try to reuse things as the original did. I don't know. I think that's what a remake needs to be.
So I guess I agree with that, but I have a lot harder stance on remakes. My stance basically is if the original movie is good, then I don't want a remake. I guess is where I stand from it. If you want, just take inspiration from that and make a new movie. Like I strongly feel like 2018's or 2018's Suspiria could have just been its own thing. Yeah, you would have had to adjust a couple of things very lightly, but I strongly believe that could have been its own thing. And it would have been a great movie. I probably would have enjoyed it more. I wouldn't have been nearly as bitter on it.
Wow, that was 2018?
Or 2018. Yeah. 2018.
Wow. Oh, no, it's still, I thought that was like a year ago.
No, definitely older than that. But yeah, no. So I definitely, it's a fine movie. Like the quality of it's good. It's well acted. Obviously, I mean, Tilda Swinton is in it, so it's well acted. Let's be real.
Oh yeah.
I just want to say, you said you don't want a remake of a good movie. Well, Suspiria is not a good movie, so
yeah. All right. Get out of here, buddy. So yeah, okay. Well, we'll wrap it up here then fairly shortly. But I think
the ending, the real quick. I love the ending. I just want to say,
it's fantastic. I know it's so it's so
fucking abrupt.
It's abrupt. It's insane, and it feels perfect in a way, right? Like it's like, all right, we're just torching this place and getting the fuck out of here.
Yeah, and then credits. And you're like, wait, what?
Credits. Well, I love too. The credits is like, you have been watching Suspiria. I was like, yeah, I have been. Thanks. I've never seen that before in a movie.
Only Dario.
Only Dario, man. I really got to watch more Dario because I feel like me being such a Suspiria fan, there was more stuff out there I would enjoy. I've heard very good things about what's it called, Tenebrae.
Oh yeah, I love Tenebrae. And Bird with the Crystal Plumage. I would say start there.
Okay, Bird with the Crystal Plumage. Yeah. So I really
want
to watch this.
I actually halfway liked Inferno, so I don't know if you've seen that one yet or not. But.
No, I the only Dario movie I've seen is, to my knowledge, Suspiria. Actually, I watched him act in Vortex.
Oh yeah.
I haven't seen him in much else. So
you also saw his cut of Dawn of the Dead, basically.
I did. I saw his cut of Dawn of the Dead, which is apparently the better cut too. So shout out to Dario. We love you here, except for Mac, I suppose, but that's okay. Mac's just visiting. He won't be here for long. Don't worry, Dario. Yeah. All right. So with a minute and a bit to spare, we're gonna table the conversation on Suspiria for now. And Damon, let's move on to, we learned how to dance with Suspiria. Now let's talk about a movie where we don't need any dancing lessons.
Oh, no, not if you've seen this movie because of the wonderful Crispin Glover's amazing dance sequence. But yeah, let me go off. I picked Friday the 13th, the final chapter. They didn't add the part 4 until later, I realized. But 1984, directed by Joseph Zito, also known for The Prowler. If nobody's seen that, that's a great slasher film. Starring Corey Feldman, Crispin Glover, a bunch of people you've never heard of as well. So the quick synopsis on it. After being announced dead and taken to a morgue, Jason Voorhees spontaneously revives, go figure, and escapes from a hospital. Stalks a group of friends renting a house in a countryside near Crystal Lake, and that's basically it. I mean, that's kind of the synopsis for the first two, three, and four. Sorry, but the movie technically, chronologically, is only a 5-day span. Movies 2, 3, and 4. So after the first film, films 2, 3, and 4 take place over about a 5-day period, and this is the end of that 5 days. Jason kills a total of 34 people in those 3 movies, by the way. But where do I really start with this? You've got some of the greatest kills in the franchise in this movie. You got somebody eating a banana and getting choked out and stabbed to death while the nasty banana is swinging out. You've got a really stupid improvised dance sequence from Crispin Glover, which he did on his own.
Did you just say stupid?
I'm sorry, stupid good. I forgot the good part.
Yeah, it's go-to dancing. Thank you.
That is amazing 80s dancing. And he actually takes a great butcher knife to the face after, so you kind of feel bad. But best of all, you actually have 12-year-old Corey Feldman. He's sort of a wunderkind artist, builder, inventor, mechanic kind of kid because he does a little bit of everything. He's smarter than he should be. He has a bunch of cool masks that he apparently sculpted and molded and casted and patched and painted all on his own while living in the middle of nowhere, and the sculpts are decent, so it makes you wonder how he's that talented. He takes on Jason by the end of the film, and he completely machetes the shit out of him. The sequence is actually really great. He shaves his own head, and it's a bald cap, obviously, right? But he shaves his own head. He comes down pretending to be a young Jason, trying to talk large Jason out of killing his sister, and he machetes him in the face, and then he just keeps hacking away. For me, Part 4 kind of just does everything right as far as what you want from a quintessential or regular slasher movie. You want to just watch popcorn, not take it serious. It's sort of why I picked Dawn of the Dead, even though Dawn of the Dead has more of a lasting impact on horror and zombie subgenre and film in general. But this is one of those, again, you just kind of put it on. You can throw it on in the background. You can just watch it with friends. It's got everything a slasher movie should have. It's got premarital sex gratuitously. It's got nudity. It's got twins with nudity. It's got murders left and right. I mean, Jason, the guy who plays him in this film, Ted White, who used to double for guys like Clark Gable and John Wayne. There's no wonder he didn't want a credit on this film. He's a huge hulking presence, and he's strong and he's menacing and kind of lacks what some of the other Jasons lacks. You get a lot of cool, imposing really feelings from him. I always thought it was funny too that the subtitle, The Final Chapter, and they continue to go on and make 6 more mainline films. You get a crossover film later, you get a reboot, you get a TV series, and you have another TV series coming out on Peacock sometime next year or this year. I don't remember when, but
yeah, I mean, Damon, could you really have told the story of Friday the 13th without us seeing Jason in space?
No, of course not.
No,
you need to come. It's got to come full circle. It's like Leprechaun. You go to the hood, you go to space.
Oh God, yeah. I really want to do a Leprechaun episode, but I got to convince somebody to watch all those with me.
I'm so in. I'm so down.
God.
All in all, I mean, this is comfort food as a film. It's the best slasher movie ever made, not by a long shot. Is it the best in its own series? I would say arguably it is, because I think the first movie is sort of its own thing. It was a different time. This is only 5 years later, but it was such a different time. And if you're considering movies 2 through 10, 2 through the reboot, I still think this is your most entertaining. And it's also oddly enough, and I say this really loosely, it's the it's the last of the grounded Friday the 13th films. Once you get into chapter 5 and you get into the next chapter, and then New Blood and Jason Takes Manhattan and Jason Goes to Hell, everything has got a supernatural element to it. He gets revived like Frankenstein's monster at one point. Jason Goes to Hell, I don't even think he's in 90% of the movie. He's getting transferred through other people like he's possessing them or something. It's got a cool poster. It's got all the nudity and the gore that you want. It's complete comfort food and popcorn. all over the place. It's not topical. It's not wave making. It's not Texas Chainsaw. It's not reinventive like Scream. It's just a fun popcorn flick that you can laugh at in a brisk 91 minutes. And it just, my whole thing too, the biggest thing that I really enjoyed about it when I was younger and as I've grown up is I enjoy that he gets killed by a kid. Like that's who beats him. A 12-year-old boy kills Jason, who just went on a 35 kill streak over the last 5 days, and this kid walks in like it's nobody's business. It's fucking awesome.
I got to give the kid some credit, though. And in fact, my very last note I took about this movie was that it's a pretty clever ploy by the kid. I got to give him some props, like dressing up and like shaving his hair like that. It's smart. It's not a stupid thing. Now, the fact that he's managed just to hack him down to death, that's interesting. But it's a smart ploy nonetheless.
It's funny. It really added. I think it was an attempt to add more depth to Jason's character, as deep as you can get in a 3-foot pool, I guess.
Yeah. So this was my first time watching Friday the 13th, the final chapter. I never seen it before. I've only ever seen the original Friday the 13th. So, one of the first things was like, oh, well, thank you for recapping Friday the 13th 1, 2, and 3 at the start. This is actually really useful for me.
Oh, yeah.
So I really appreciate that. So I love the little recap at the start there. And like you said, David, is this a great movie? No, it's absolutely not. It's a lot of fun, though. And it has a lot of that 80s kind of cheese and heart to it. There's so many cliches in this movie. Like I kind of started like a little tick box for me. Like, why are the coroners in horror movies always quirky and weird? Of course, he gets hacked to death first, but yeah, he's very quirky and weird. How many people has Jason cockblocked in this franchise? I imagine the number's got to be huge, but he's at it again here and doing his best job with that. Women undressing through a window and being peered on. Here you go, take another shot. Oh, we've got twins now. Okay, take 2 shots for each twin. I mean, it just goes on and on. Why are all these girls dressed like this and shit skanks? Like, I mean, maybe that's just teenage girls in the 80s. I don't know, but Jesus, they all act like that they don't have a brain, and the guys too. To be fair, it's not just the girls. Besides Crispin, he's got game with his beautiful dancing.
That dance move, baby.
Oh, I know, he's just great. But yeah, you know what? I mean, this just a really fun time to be had in this movie. By the way, the smartest person in this movie is that dog that just bails out the fucking window.
Oh, hell yeah!
Near the end, because he's just he's got a brain there. But Mac, wrap us your thoughts on Friday the 13th, the final chapter.
This is definitely my favorite Friday the 13th film.
Fuck yes.
I don't know if I would consider it the best. I don't know. Because I do really like the original, but it is definitely its own thing. And really, the series doesn't start until 2, honestly. Is when Jason really comes to play.
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, I pretty much watched horror films on AMC during their Fear Fest or whatever they always have every October. And it seemed like they only played the first one, Manhattan, and then like a few from the Tommy Jarvis. But I don't know if they ever actually played this at a time that I could watch it growing up.
Oh wow!
So I pretty much only saw 1, 5, 6, 7, and 8 for like the longest time, and I didn't even realize that he didn't get the mask until 3. And when I was watching 2, I finally got to watch it. I was like, "What the hell is this?"
Oh, the
like,
burlap sack.
Why has he got a burlap sack? Like, what's going on here? But then, like, I finally could sit down, and I did a complete series watch through a couple years ago, and this one just really stuck out. I was like, man, this one's the quintessential Friday film. It just takes everything that's kind of come before it. It improves on a lot of things. It's a lot more like, it's more unexpected on the kills. Like, you're not exactly, like, you hear the music, but it's not popping up like when you think he's going to pop up. It's a little bit added suspense to it compared to a lot of the other Friday films. I've always enjoyed how they start this film off, where it's almost like it's the campfire in a previous film, but it's like they're telling horror stories on a campfire just of the previous 4 days, and then from the original movie. I mean, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I've always loved that too. The opening recap. And I love that it actually takes up a good 10 to 12 minutes. And then after credits, this movie's like maybe 71 minutes.
Oh, it's a nice
Yeah.
jaunt little ride. Mac, you mentioned the music, and I want to give a shout out to just slasher movies in general for having such iconic theme songs. You know, we'll talk about Halloween in a minute, and that's probably the best one of them all. But I mean, Friday the 13th, man. Tell me that's not fucking iconic, man. You can just do that little fucking that little saying, and like you'll probably raise the hairs off of a lot of people's backs, man. Like it's just great, right?
Oh, it's iconic.
I kid you not. Every time I'm ever in like the woods, I just start making that noise.
Yeah, right. Like it's perfect. It's so good. Oh, I love it. I love it. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention too, but to take another, cliche shot, I love how at the end of slasher movies you just kind of start getting all those dead bodies revealed, and like the survivor will just like start like finding them all one by one in very quick succession and shrieking at the top of their lungs. Which, by the way, man, I swear to God, like they just had to have like a special like talent pool of people looking for people that could shriek very loud in the 80s. Like, can I just hear you scream? Okay, you're good. Welcome to the movie.
That's so true. It's crazy. I when I rewatched this last week, and I've seen this more times than I can count. I actually counted. I go, how many people die in this movie? It's 14. I didn't even know there was 14 characters in this movie. And by the end, I was like, am I right? And I went and checked online, and I was totally right. It's 14 kills, which, not bad. There's some cool ones too. The shower sequence where he just gets his head bashed in is great.
Oh yeah.
Even Jason taking the machete and that cool puppet of him like kind of sliding down the machete while it's on the side of his head and like his eye. It's really fun. Really, really. I think this was kind of the peak of Friday the 13th kills and effects. And I know they were super low budget and everybody hated the director, but I think this was really peak for the series.
Did the director have a glass fetish? I'm just wondering, because there was so much broken glass throughout this movie. Like they throw was it one of the twins gets thrown from the
from the top?
Yeah, and it lands on the car and all the glass shatters.
and now when you watch it in HD, you can see that she's wearing like leggings so that she's not naked from the waist down, which I understand. I'm not like being a creep, but I always laugh when you start seeing things now that things are in 1080 or better. Or you start seeing the string that pulls the harpoon in part 3. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I think the only person I felt bad about dying was Crispin, and that's just because of his sick dancing moves. I was like, well, that's a waste. But everyone else, as they died, I was just like, yeah, you're just a body, man. Like, goodbye.
Oh yeah, Teddy, I was just waiting for him to die, and
Oh yes,
which is by design. Like, I don't think we're supposed to feel bad for any of these fucking paper bag characters. Like,
oh no, not at all, except for Crispin.
Except for Crispin, of course, because again, his dancing moves, like those dance moves. The world.
He finds out that he's not a dead. What was Teddy calling him? A dead fuck? Yeah.
He not only does he get to bang the twin, he gets to bang the hot one.
Oh, so, you know what? He doesn't get fully cock blocked. He actually scores.
That's true. Shout out because you know what? Jason probably was like, yo, this guy dances, man. He fucks. He can fuck. Go ahead. You do your thing. I'll kill you after. You're good.
Jason was very sex positive on this film, I gotta say.
Yeah. Really nice of him.
Yeah, he really only just cock blocked, I guess, the people at the start. Which, it's funny, that was my first note, and it never really happened again. But yeah, good for him. Although the two that end up going skinny dipping, they probably would have ended up fucking. So
no.
He kind of cock blocks them, but all right. Do we have any other comments? We've got about 5 minutes left on this one. So Damon, did you have anything else you want to bring up in your notes? Mac, yourself?
Yeah, stupidly, I went a little too fast there, winding down from work. Sorry. But my fun fact on this, and I only say this because I have a tremendous amount of respect for Roger Ebert and certain film critics. Doesn't mean I necessarily like them, and I kind of don't, especially when they get a little mean-spirited. So Roger Ebert actually called this film, in quotes, an immoral and reprehensible piece of trash after he paid his own money to see it, paid using his own money to see it. I'm not saying it's a great movie, but it sounds more to me like you're mad that you spent money to go watch this and you weren't given a free screening. Am I crazy? Just saying.
Any early video game reviewer mad they didn't get a free code.
Exactly what that made me think of.
Well, I mean, look, the guy actually had positive things to say about Irreversible. And I know this is a weird poll, but this is what it reminds me of. And if you've seen Irreversible, you'll know exactly why that's an interesting poll, because he had positive things to say about that, even though he was basically left in the same reprehensible shell-shocked state. And this is obviously nowhere near as disturbing or as fucked up as Irreversible. So yeah, I think he's just salty, personally.
Yeah, I mean, he also, and I'm just going to say this, he also said Home Alone 3 was the best of the series.
Oh,
And
look, here's the problem.
people make mistakes, and then people say that.
When you're in the public eye for so long and you do so many reviews, your bad takes are going to start to come out. And that's just what it is with Mr. Ebert. I love Roger. I absolutely adore him. There's a documentary that I've been wanting to watch about him forever.
Oh, it's actually really good. I think I know what you're
Life
talking
itself.
about.
Yeah. I want to watch that forever. I've heard it's really good. And so I have nothing but respect for the man, but that does not mean he is immune to dog shit takes.
Oh, no.
And yeah, there's definitely a couple of them.
I think that's everything I have. All in all, I love this fucking movie. I'll put it on again tonight just because.
Fair enough. Mac, did you have anything else you wanted to bring up about this seminal classic?
Yeah, just real quick. I really like how they made this one different than the previous three films on how it's no longer like a summer camp setting. It's just focusing in on like family and then a group of friends going to a lake house.
Yeah.
I just really like that they changed it up. It's not just the same plot over and over.
No, I totally agree. I love that too. I was reading actually that the director, when he was given the script or when he was told he was hired on, the studio asked him to write it also, and he was like, "But I'm not a writer." And they told him, "Well, we'll give you a check for directing, and then we'll give you this other check for writing. So you're getting paid twice now." And he goes, "Oh, okay, no problem. I'm a writer now." So he actually went and hired a friend of his, using some of that extra cash to write the script for him, and then he changed things while he was shooting. Kind of smart, which could be why though some of those changes were made. Is my thinking at least, but. Yeah, if nobody's seen The Prowler, definitely go watch that. That's Zito's other slasher film that is pretty fun and has some really inventive and cool kills as well, if you're into the gory aspect of slashers.
I mean, if you're not into cool kills, why are you listening to this podcast in the first place, right?
Exactly.
That's just kind of the thing. All right, so we'll put a pin. We'll stab Jason for now, put him down, but don't worry. I'm sure he'll be back at some point. The fucker always is. And we will move on to the final movie. Mac, tell us about your shocking choice.
Halloween, release date 1978 by one of the greatest American filmmakers, John Carpenter, starring Jamie Lee Curtis and Donald Pleasance and a bunch of other people. Probably people don't know, besides maybe PJ Souls. But other than that, I don't know if anybody would recognize anybody from this film. Maybe Kyle Richards because she's a housewife now. But 15 years after murdering his sister on Halloween night 1963, Michael Myers escapes from a mental hospital and returns to the small town of Haddonfield, Illinois, to kill again. Fun facts. Of the budget, half of it was spent on Panavision cameras, so the film would have a 2.35:1 scope. And also, Donald Pleasant was paid $20,000 for 5 days' work, which is a pretty big percentage for this independent film. But let's take a tour and join me on this journey of how I came to discover Halloween. Growing up, I loved going into the local mom and pop video rental stores. I was always fascinated by the box art of horror films, even though they creeped me out. I was pretty young, so like I would look at them and I'm like, oh man, that's kind of scary. Then I have a nightmare about it that night. And I just remember seeing several of these Halloween films there, and the pumpkin made of the knives in Michael's hand. It's just so iconic. It's my favorite poster for any horror film. It just always drew me in. And my dad ended up buying the first 3 Halloween films on VHS at a Kmart at some point. But it wasn't until the 6th grade that I finally actually sat down to watch Halloween, which had just always kind of been in the back of my mind. Like, oh yeah, I want to see that. I want to see that. It just happened to be the first year I didn't go trick or treating. I was in middle school and I felt like I'd grown up. I was like, all right, you know what? I don't need to trick or treat anymore. I can still get candy for free. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna watch some horror films tonight. So I really hadn't seen a whole lot at this point. AMC was of course doing their usual Halloween showing on Halloween night, as they always do. So I sat down in front of the TV with some Reese cups, and what transpired over the next 2 hours changed everything for me. I was just completely captivated. I loved it, and it scared the crap out of me because I mean I was in the sixth grade. I wasn't used to horror films either, and I think it was the first time a film had really kind of got to me, and it was a feeling that I loved, and I couldn't quite figure it out because it's just a new feeling, and it just completely turned me into a horror junkie. Um, but let's just go ahead and get into the film. First up, I think this opening to this film is probably like my favorite horror opening. You're just watching a POV shot stalk this teenager and her boyfriend from outside the house, and you just see the tracking shots going through the back of the house, going through the house, and then ultimately killing the teenager. You see them going down the steps, come outside, and it's revealed that it's just a little boy. That just completely shocked me. I had no idea that you could really do that in a film at that point. Uh, there's just so much stuff in here. It's super influential. It's not the first slasher movie, but it's probably the most influential slasher film. But I mean, there's so many things. So if y'all want to chime in on anything, y'all feel free.
Well,
I
I
could
will
go on
just
for hours.
no, it's fine. I will just mention quickly. And funny, my first note is about that iconic opening, and I do feel it is
Yes.
very iconic. Just the way the pumpkin slowly rots. You get the music, which obviously is just an all timer for a horror score, just like its own theme. We'll call it Michael's theme, I guess. Just a classic, and it sets the tone perfectly for what's to come in that movie. So I definitely agree with that. Also, I just want to say, and if you want proof that I'm not a very intelligent human being, I actually just had to look when you said I had never noticed that he was holding the knife before in the poster. Like that's a hand. Like I never noticed that that's connected to the pumpkin, and that's just wild to me. So thank you for pointing that out to me.
Oh
Oh
yeah.
man, it's so good,
It,
so good.
I'm with you, Mac. That poster. I mean, I've always had a weird tie with Halloween because my birthday's on Halloween. So growing up, it was one of those things we always watched or just kind of came up. But that poster was always so striking, and to just reinforce your point about it being influential, it's crazy. I mean, its presence is still felt today in other films. You see it everywhere. The whole first person sequence, though not the first movie to do it, did it probably one of the most effectively. Everything from the music and the oneers in it that they shoot are fucking great. Going through the house or around the house and watching stuff through the windows, it's it's mind boggling how well this movie holds up and how effective and tense this movie is executed and done with your killer only being in it for what is it, like 10 or 11 minutes.
Yeah, it's a very small amount.
I was just gonna say it's completely wild how iconic this movie is, and just how much it holds up and it stands the test of time, and its fingerprints are kind of all over every other over so many other horror movies today. And I did pick Suspiria as my favorite horror movie, but if I'm being or slasher, excuse me, but if I'm being honest, it's a coin flip between this and Suspiria. And I picked Suspiria because I didn't want us to have the same one, or to have two of the same ones. It's not fun while we do this show unless it's absolutely needed. But yeah, no, Halloween is just a stone cold classic. Sorry, go ahead, Mac.
Now, when you say coin flip, do you mean where it has two heads and both heads are Halloween,
No,
or
no, no, no.
or
Heads would be Suspiria, tails would be Halloween, sir.
okay? I just had to ask. Uh,
He makes his own
uh,
luck.
One of my favorite things about this film is just that it's so suspenseful throughout this whole movie. The score comes into play with this, and they screen tested this film without the music. I don't remember if it was with the execs or exactly off the top of my head now. So he went back and he just made the themes, just like within a few days or something like that. It was something crazy. some of the most iconic horror themes he just created in a short time span, and it makes the movie work. Without that score, I don't know if it's quite as great as it is. I love how once Laurie kind of goes over to the Wallace's house to check on after that obscene phone call, as she calls it. Uh, that's when the film just really ramps up, and the movie's done in 15 minutes. And it's like it all comes to a head, and then it's an abrupt ending. I love the ending. You see the little imprint in the grass. He's still there. You get the little shots of like where he's been all night, and it ends up back at the Myers house, and you hear the breathing, which they end up doing every freaking Halloween movie with the breathing in the credits.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of a staple now. Um, I mean, there's just so many things about this movie I love. I could really go on for hours and hours.
You've got 14 minutes.
That's not enough. Donald Pleasance. I mean, we got to highlight him. He kills this role, and I found out recently that he didn't even really like the character when filming it. Like he was on like a talk show, and he was just talking about how he's like it's like the things he's saying just don't make any sense, which is just funny to me because then he starred on for 4 more sequels,
At
and
least,
it's probably
right?
his most iconic role that everybody associates with him.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I was talking with my dad a few days ago because he's actually I don't know if I've told you this, Mac, but he's rewatching all the Halloween movies right now.
Nice.
Why I don't know, but he is. And he was laughing, talking because I think I want to say he's on the Curse of Michael Myers right now, something like that. And
Which cut is he watching?
Which one?
Producer's cut or theatrical?
Whatever the fucking cut is on that's on Apple TV probably. But he was telling me about how one of the funniest things to him is just how crazy Donald Pleasance's character starts to get throughout the series, and I guess he's just and I guess he just says like by the last movies he's just basically like incomprehensible, just like Michael's just fucking going
he's
mental.
just like purposely putting children in danger. Later films, like it was purposely.
Oh yeah.
But he's actually, it's interesting rewatching this. I thought he was in the first one more, but he's not. And it's interesting too because neither is Michael. Like these two like looming presences throughout this franchise are both really not in the movie all that much. It's Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, who has to do so much of the heavy lifting in this movie, and she does a very admirable job here.
I love how the characters' dialogue, it just feels like actual conversations that teenagers would have had in 1978, which is a credit to Deborah Hill because I think she took care of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if she got really the credit back when this film really came out, but has gotten credit over the years for her impact for this film. And she was actually the hand that they used in the shot in that tracking opening, getting the knife out, which I thought was cool because I never would have figured that out unless somebody told me. But my favorite parts is just really just watching Michael stalking his prey. See him in the background of shots. It's just chilling. It's a little unnerving. I love the new 4K cut that came out. I actually noticed some things that I had never seen before, and that blew my mind because I've seen this movie like a million times over the years. It's my comfort food.
Just interrupt to touch on that for 2 seconds, but I bought the 4K cut too. Tremendous, like just a tremendous cut in terms of how it looks, and it does. I think there's an Atmos track on there too, so it obviously sounds great.
Ooh.
But yeah, the visuals of it were just very, very good. It's a high quality cut, which I think it's what's it called? Scream Factory? Is that Shout? Scream Factory?
Scream's their horror.
Yeah, line. They did the Army of Darkness one too.
Oh,
recently that came out, and they make high quality sets, so I wasn't surprised. But I'm glad I picked up the collector's edition for this because it's a classic movie and deserves it for sure.
Their They Live one's really, really good too.
Will you be picking up the other Halloween collector's editions from that 4K series that they're doing?
No.
Okay, I just wanted to ask.
I'm definitely getting Season of the Witch.
Oh man,
it's a good cut too.
I'm one of those guys. I like part 3.
I guess we should mention our histories with the franchise briefly. Mac, you've seen them all, so we're not going to ask you. But I've actually only seen the first two original Halloween movies. Then I watched the Rob Zombie ones, and then I watched the reboot trilogy. So I've seen all those ones, but I haven't seen any of the other ones. I'm curious, Damon, have you seen them all?
Yeah.
Shout out to Corey.
Shout out to Corey. I've seen them all. I'm trying to.
Okay.
I actually just rewatched most of them. I think last year, as far as the sequels go.
Interesting. Okay, I would, it's a time management thing, and there's so many movies I want to see, but
yeah.
If it ever gets to a point where I've kind of caught up on everything I've wanted to, which God knows if that'll ever happen, but diving into series like that would be probably my next goal. But I've got 9 Leprechaun movies to watch, so priorities.
Don't worry, Jennifer Aniston's only in the first one.
Oh, that's fine. I just waiting for Leprechaun to go to the hood, man. That's all I care about.
That's the best one. Oh God, I can't keep a straight face. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to follow up the Leprechaun Goes to the Hood with the Halloween's version of Trick or Treat, motherfucker. Eddie will not get that until he sees Halloween Resurrection.
Oh my God. Just when you thought they were getting good again with H2O, they give you Resurrection.
It is by far the worst horror film besides Suspiria. I'm just kidding. It's not that bad.
Honestly, if anything, now I'm just tempted to jump right into that one because it just sounds like a good time.
You should. They took like, this found footage thing. They kind of mixed found footage in with it a little bit.
And Busta Rhymes.
It's Busta Rhymes. God. You got Tyra Banks in that, I think.
Yeah.
All right. At least so it's basically Michael Goes to the Hood. Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah. It's terrible.
It's at least H2O's got like, Josh Hartnett and Jamie Lee Curtis comes back, and you got Joseph Gordon-Levitt for 7 minutes. It's that one's fun.
I love how you can tell the impact Scream had between The Curse of Michael Myers and H2O. It's night and day. Although I actually like The Curse of Michael Myers a pretty good bit. Shocking, I know. Halloween simp over here, but.
Yeah, I don't know.
Those are pretty good.
It's an interesting, it's obviously a endearing franchise that stuck around for a while. And the reboot, to touch on the reboot trilogy quick, I actually really like the first one. I think it's quite good. So I did enjoy that.
The worst one of the trilogy.
That's absolutely incorrect and a horrible take. But yeah, the first one's pretty good. Halloween Kills is fun, but it's just stupid. And Ends is just, in my opinion, a fucking mess. But I'm interested to see where they take it from here. There's just been so many Halloween movies.
Nowhere.
But, it could be nowhere. I don't know. But the thing is, these movies make money, man, right? And especially with how well Scream 6 just did, and not only from a quality standpoint too, but from a box office perspective, I feel like they're going to want to keep making these.
Leave the Strode family alone. Let's move on, please.
Yeah.
I really hope whatever they do next, just keep Jamie Lee Curtis out of it. Scream moved on from Neve Campbell. If Scream can move on from Neve Campbell, you can move on from the Strodes for sure.
I will say that just shows how big of a fan Mac is of the first movie. Is that he thinks the first of the new trilogy is the worst. And I think it's so antithetical to the original movie. I mean,
I agree.
Because it's everything about the original movie is suspense and terror and ratcheting that up. And the new movie is nothing but how gory can you make it and how shocking can the kill be and none of that's scary to me. And I don't think it's anywhere near as scary. Well, it's not scary at all. But when you look at how lasting and how still suspenseful and scary the original movie is in comparison, I think it speaks volumes. It's like, I think that's also why some of the other sequels start to suffer, is because they're too worried about how cool the kill can be or how to compete with the other slasher films doing stuff like that when it was never built on those bones.
It also doesn't have a doctor put on the mask like a freaking imbecile. I'm still pissed off about that scene. That scene is like forever tainted that reboot for me. I hate that scene so much.
I agree with the suspenseful bit, but again, I'm gonna loop back to my point. I never find any of these movies scary. So the fact
True.
that the fact that the Halloween reboot isn't scary, and it's not, I agree. That didn't bother me. It is less suspenseful for sure. It definitely goes for its own different thing, but I feel like it pays enough homage to the first movie from the opening credits, which are basically a rip, to everything else throughout that movie. There's enough homage paid that I really enjoyed it.
There's actually little nods to even the weird sequels in the middle, like the Curse of Michael Myers
Okay,
and
cool.
the ones with Danielle Harris and all those. There's some really weird nods.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. And then Kills, just like I said, Halloween Kills just goes off. Evil dies tonight. Like, no, man.
My biggest issue
My
with
soul
that
dies tonight watching that scene.
trilogy is that it's like, okay, we're going to disregard every other film besides the first one. I'm like, okay, cool. We're going to start fresh. There's not going to be no weird continuity or whatever. And then what do? You just bring up stuff from all the sequels. Like, he's like, oh, let's go to the hospital.
Yep.
Oh, let's have a fire. Let's set them on fire. That's never been done before. Halloween 2, motherfucker. Halloween 2.
All right, just to interject, we've got 3.5 minutes left. So if you guys have any other thoughts or things you wanted to put out there, now is the time.
The marshal in the black suit. Okay, I'm done. Go ahead.
I actually like that plot line, and they ended up doing absolutely nothing with it. And it ended up being is the only thing that made Halloween 5 worth watching.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree.
The only thing I really wanted to touch on quickly with my notes, well, there's a couple things. First of all, Jimmy Lee Curtis looks way too old to be in high school in this movie, so yeah, that's fucked up.
Everybody looks way too old.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a typical complaint. The only other thing I want to say is it's shocking how little of the stereotypical slasher things are in this movie. Really, the only couple ones I could find is the teenagers having sex dying, which is obviously there.
Well, that's because it created the rules of the slasher.
That's true.
There you go.
And then just the dead bodies back to back. You kind of get that too at the end with Jamie Lee Curtis. But other than that, there's not much. So credit for that. It's definitely, as far as slasher movies goes, Halloween 1 is very different. And it kind of, sits on its own laurels as just a really, not only a fun movie, but really well fucking made too.
I want to do a quick shout out to the bedsheet Michael Myers.
Oh,
Probably
yes.
The coolest little scene. I forgot what Peter Soul's character says. Somebody got your ghost, Bob? It still cracks me up.
When I was a kid, I wish I had a babysitter like Laurie Strode, though. Great babysitter. Like, shout out to her. Protects the kids, has fun with them. Like, just a boss.
Oh, yeah.
Total boss bitch.
The only problem I'd have is that she just would never believe me if I said I see the boogeyman across the street.
Sure.
Like, nobody believes me. I believe you, Tommy.
But yeah, and it is funny to touch back to our boy here for a second. One of my notes was Loomis is such an interesting and mysterious presence here. Great character. I wish it remained that way.
Yeah. Oh man, I wish. Rest in peace, Donald Pleasance.
Rest in
Real
peace.
Quick, it's my favorite horror movie. It's arguably probably my favorite movie. If I'm not talking about The Godfather or The Apartment or something else, it, as much as I love it, it's definitely not perfect. There's issues like I don't understand the town layout. You have Loomis is just over there, camped out at the old Myers house, and he just kind of walks a street over, and he sees the car that he's been looking for, and then he's just like walks another street over, and he's at the Wallaces and the other house, and he's just there. But it takes Lori and Annie from daylight to nighttime to get to the house. Like, what's going on? I feel like it's like back then. There's not a whole lot to do, so they were probably just cruising down the strip or whatever, or probably smoking because they were smoking earlier and when they get to the hardware store, maybe just passing time. But they did have to add that scene of them driving where it's kind of like the golden hour or whatever. But they had to add it because it was just so noticeable. You went from like complete daylight to complete night.
Oh yeah.
So they did add that. So I'm glad they at least did that to try to do something.
All right, boys, we got 5 seconds left. Anything else quickly? Love it. Good movie. Great movie.
Amazing. Iconic.
Great.
Goat.
Awesome. And that is it. We are stopping the clock. That is all. Wow. That was 3 just tremendous. Yes, Mac, 3 tremendous movies, all of them, no question. We had a great time discussing 3 fantastic movies. I would just like to thank everyone for listening to another episode of this podcast. And as always, I would like to thank my co-host, fantastic co-host, Damon Weathers. And then once again, Mac, for being here. Damon, any final thoughts before we duck out?
I've got nothing.
Nothing? All right. Mac, final thoughts?
Yes. Originally, when it was going to be Texas Chainsaw Massacre instead of Final Chapter, I was going to have a joke for Suspiria and Texas Chainsaw about how I watched the remake instead. But you took that away from me, so now I didn't get here.
Oh man, Jessica Biel, man. Like, I mean, at least the Texas Chainsaw remake wasn't all too bad. But that is, shout out Michael Bay making horror movies. What a weird time. But that is all of the time we have. We have gone over our allotment for Damon and Mac. We again thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be back soon. See you guys.
Pure evil.